I don't remember exactly how we got to the conversation. We kind of started to touch a little bit on the idolization of marriage and Christian power couples. And I really wanted to dive more into the idea of power couples, Christian power couples, and maybe how that in itself, like, is it idolization of marriage or is it idolization of ministry? And how, because I do actually think you could probably, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think you actually can have really cool Christian power couples and it's really healthy and wholesome and is good for the kingdom. But I think that a lot of people are doing it wrong.
Agreed.
And so I want to talk about that. Like, what's a power couple? What's a Christian power couple? Where are we going wrong? And like, should we be seeking power couple type relationships?
Well, I think that in the same way that there's a tendency in like churches and Christian circles to idolize marriage as being like the pinnacle of relationships. Like that's like the one relationship that we all have to like aspire to, you know, and all other relationships are somehow subpar. I think that is the same kind of energy that makes people think that like a Christian power couple has to or should look like one thing. Like to be a Christian power couple, you know, have to have a certain size of online platform and you have to, you know, be involved in like this, and this. And you have to look like this and you have to like, it has to look like one thing, right? Or like be done one kind of a way. But I don't think that that's true. I think then we have to kind of define what actually is a Christian power couple, because that's kind of a weird, like, what even is that? That's just kind of it feels weird to say. I don't even like say, like, what does that mean?
And I'm glad you said that, because I think we should define what a power couple is, or like what we understand it to be, and then let's talk about it in the Christian context. But even before that, why do you think marriage is viewed as that pinnacle? Because I agree, I think marriage is an absolutely beautiful thing, and I understand that marriage is supposed to be a reflection of Christ's love for the church. Like, I get that. And I think with that in mind, I'm like, of course I want to experience that. Like, that is the most beautiful analogy. Like, it's so cool. But I don't think I quite understand why that has become the be all end all. Like, you've arrived. It's like this point of, now you know you've made it. Now, you know, your parents know that they actually did a good job with you. Now, like, I don't understand how it became that type of benchmark.
Okay. My raw, unfiltered, unprocessed opinion on that,
hit me,
is two things. One, I think that like so many other things, marriage has just become like a life mile marker that you're just supposed to hit, and you're supposed to hit by a certain point in time. And two, I think the second reason is sex.
Okay.
I think that the narrative is that like sex is bad or wrong or whatever. Don't do it unless you're married. And then once you get married, then like all bets are off. Like, have at it. But like those feelings are such like just like a human, like innate human thing that like when you speak about it in a way that's kind of unhelpful and just saying like don't do it until you reach this point or until you've like checked this box off, then like now all of a sudden people just start to like try to, what do I say? now it's like this like thing that people are like trying to get. Like, what am I trying to say? How do I describe what I'm trying to say?
The reason for why it's the pinnacle is sex. And that's a strong reason why, which takes away from why you should want to be married.
Do we actually think that that's what the pinnacle is?
I don't think marriage is the pinnacle.
No, I don't think so either.
But I do think marriage is a beautiful goal because I think God told us to be fruitful and multiply, you know? Like, and there are people who can't, and that doesn't take away from certain things, right? But if you can, I think wanting to be married is a great goal. But wanting to be married for the sake of
now it means
just
you can
having
have
sex takes away from the beauty of what marriage actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's tainted marriage and why it feels like this thing you're trying to reach, because the actual relationship part, the love part, the reflecting the love of God part is not what people are thinking about in the forefront of their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the conversation about sex is just so much don't do it until you get married. And so because the context of that marriage relationship is the only space that, you know, we're taught that you can have sex, it now just means that like people then are just like aspiring to like reach that level. Like I gotta like level up so I can get to that point. Because that's the only space, the only relationship in which I can like have sex and like feel like I'm not, you know, doing something wrong. But aside from that, I'm taught that I can't. So you have people out here who are just like horny. And so they're trying to get married so that they can not feel bad about it anymore. Mm-hmm. Basically. That's what I think.
Interesting. I want to say I disagree.
Okay.
Because one, in the grand context of society, keeping in mind, not everyone is a Christian. Not everyone believes in the idea of waiting until marriage. So many people are still, like, you see it all the time. Like, women are like, I want to be married. I want to like get it. And I mean, of course, me being a woman, I see the woman side of it more. I don't really know what guys are saying, but people who are not Christian and who are of the world, let's say, like they don't have to wait, or they don't believe that they need to wait. So it's like, is that really the driving force behind them wanting to get married?
But I think I'm talking specifically in a Christian space though.
Okay.
Because I don't actually think that, maybe I would change my mind if I reflected on this longer. But like, again, off the top of my head, I don't necessarily think that outside of Christian spaces, marriage relationships are being idolized as like the pinnacle.
I kind of do think they are. I think that it shows, I think that people view it as, how would I phrase this? Just the way people make such a big deal out of marriage in culture, I do think that it's being idolized to a certain extent. I think that people respect you differently if you're married or about to be married. I think people, even just being single versus taken, I think people view you with more respect, or even just they're nicer to you when you have a partner. Like, people are more likely to say, oh, congratulations. And like, I'm so happy for you. And da-da-da. If you tell somebody like, oh yeah, I'm single, no one's like, good for you. Like, people don't. It's like, why? I think that there is this different view. And I don't know if it's this idea of, because that shows that you're wanted, or that shows that you've, again, hit a milestone. But it feels to me like there is something. But then the other reason that makes me feel like I disagree is I think about my own experience, like wanting to be married from the time you're a kid. Like, so many kids do this. So many little girls do this. You're dreaming about weddings and all these different things and having a husband and having kids and like having a family one day, I don't think we're thinking about having sex at that point in time, but it's something you just know you want. I think it's only as people get older and depending on what experiences they've had as well, thrown into the mix where it's like, oh, like, yeah, like sex is going to be a great thing. But also, I mean, how much of marriage does that even, like how much of your married life is taken up by that? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I think marriage or not marriage. I don't think I know if sex is the driving factor to people wanting to get married or even idolizing marriage. I think that it's a status thing. I think it makes you look good. And I think it proves that like you are worthy and wanted. I think that that's some of the things that I notice.
I think I would say both of those things, in my opinion, both of those things are true in Christian spaces. I think outside of a Christian space, I would say it definitely is more so like the social status, basically, that comes with being able to say, you know, I'm married, whatever. But even then, I don't know if that's specifically marriage or if that's just like the social status or the I don't know, respect or acknowledgement or whatever of just like being in a long-term relationship in general. Like I think about so many like celebrity couples, for example, who we like really admire and like respect. Like Oprah, for example, her and her partner, they're not married, but they've been together for like what, like 40 something years, you know, but they're not actually married. So,
okay, here's where I would counter that. Yes, that's, but here's where I would counter because, and I know I did bring up the conversation of what it looks like in Christianity and then in the world, but obviously we're doing this through the lens of Christianity because that's what we are. So technically she is married. Like, do you know what I mean? Biblically, she would be married. I
see what you're saying.
Her desire to be in that type of relationship, that long-term committed relationship. And that's what marriage is, a long-term committed relationship.
Is that what marriage is? Is that the definition of marriage?
I'm not saying it's a definition, but that's what's happening. It's a lot like you're in a long-term, eventually it becomes a long-term committed relationship, or it's a relationship where the goal is to be long-term and you're committed to each other.
But is that marriage though?
I think marriage constitutes a lot more than that. Like, because that gives more just your living situation and the fact that like, it's like, yeah, this is my person. Marriage has so many layers to it. And again, I don't always feel very well equipped to speak on this because I'm not married, but like what I understand about marriage, if something is a covenant, that is the deepest form of a promise between two people. And so what does that promise entail? It entails your whole life. So every aspect we could think about in our lives, that is all cumulatively the definition of marriage. It is doing, so yes, at its base, it's doing life with somebody and being committed to them long term in every part of life. Now, is that like a dictionary definition? Probably not, but that's what I understand it to be. Yeah. I was going somewhere else and I forget. So jump in and save me, please. I beg.
I think the fundamental question would be, what is marriage? If marriage is something created by God, like what separates the person from in the long-term relationship who says, I don't want to get married, but I want to live life with you, versus the person that says, I want to marry you? Because there is a clear difference. You know what I mean? And I think that is the fundamental question. Because I think from there, you can then answer all these other questions. But how many people actually know what the definition, like what is marriage? What is it?
To look up a definition.
You know what I mean, though? What is marriage?
The legally Like, let me read. The legally or formally recognized union of two people as partners in a personal relationship, historically and in some jurisdictions, specifically a union between a man and a woman. Or a combination or mixture of two or more elements.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, okay, my original thought, because the definition of marriage versus the purpose of marriage, are those two different things? Because to me, the purpose of marriage is what I already said. It is to showcase the love that Christ has for the church in a way that we could probably the best way understand. We'll never fully get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's something we won't get to, like, glory or whatever. But that is probably the best way we could understand how much God loves us. So that's the purpose of marriage, I think. But the definition, based on what this is saying, it's like a legal binding. Which, again, I used the word covenant before. It's a covenant between two people. You're promising each other everything, like to join your lives together. So that's what I see it as in terms of definition and purpose.
Yeah. I mean, so I think in terms of like why it's idolized, specifically, again, in a Christian space, I would say then yes, I think that a lot of it does have to do with like status and, again, feeling like you've reached a certain point in your life and you get to check off a box that we're all told we're supposed to check off at some point, sooner rather than later. But I think maybe in terms of what motivates people to get married, then maybe I would say is that combined with the whole like, oh, and then I get to have sex and not feel bad about it kind of thing.
Okay.
Maybe that's what I would say.
Okay. I think it's now with the definition and the purpose that I've stated, I think that it's become this pinnacle, especially in Christian culture, because it feels like you've unlocked a new level of spirituality. You get God more.
Interesting.
And so if you haven't reached that, it's like, oh, like one day you'll get it. I so badly want for you to understand. Like sometimes it can feel like that. Like I haven't unlocked this new level of spirituality. I won't get certain things because I'm not like that spiritual level of maturity. And that's why I think we see a lot of times where women are so caught up on, let me learn how to wait well so I could prove to God that I've waited well and I'm spiritually ready and I'm mature enough to handle the husband so then I could get it. Your goal in that and no more is to be spiritually mature. Your goal is no longer to get closer to God. You're like, I just have to prove to God that I'm ready. And that's why I'm saying I think that it demonstrates like this certain level of spirituality almost, or just understanding.